Hello everybody, here we are today doing our 2024-25 NHL season preview for the Chicago Blackhawks. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So as you guys probably saw yesterday, I started season previews and we covered the Boston Bruins. I said that I was going to be using a wheel to decide who we were picking, but gotta be honest here, I did get a little bit of input from a buddy of mine that is a huge Hawks fan, and he said, how about the Hawks go right after Boston since you already did the notes for them? So I better be getting a text from you tomorrow about how you love the video. So anyway, we're talking about the Hawks in this one, and we will be discussing the fact that this team had 52 points last year and were well and truly out of playoff spot, being one of the worst teams in the league. On top of that, of course, too, they haven't really been a playoff side in recent years, but they opened up their checkbook a little bit this year. They spent a little bit of money, they made some trades, and they are a side that a lot of people are saying, oh, they're going to be better. Now, that's not necessarily the case. We can say, oh yes, they did improve, but some other teams, of course, within their division are trying to be better. Other teams out west and in the league in general is going to be getting better too. So now we talk about what are some storylines for this team and where exactly they'll be by the end of the season. So the first storyline we're going to be following is, can the top six produce, especially when it comes to goal scoring? And that's really what we're going to be looking at here with this topic, because last year the Hawks were one of just two teams that failed to crack, I believe, 200 goals on the season, the other one being the San Jose Sharks. And they desperately need to be able to score more goals if they are going to take that next step forward, or really their first step forward in this era. And I wonder a little bit who's going to be leading the charge here, and probably, if we're being honest, it's going to be Connor Bedard. He was actually tied for the lead with team goals last year with 22, and this is despite the fact that he only played 68 games and was a rookie. But I see a world where he's going to be able to get even more goals. Why? Well, because he's going to be in his second year and has got more experience in the league. But on top of that too, he could play a full 82 games. So is 30 goals out of the question? Absolutely not. In fact, I think 30 should be the mark that he sets for himself. On top of that too, you have other guys that they were able to bring in, like Tyler Bertuzzi, and he is going to be playing for his fourth original six team, which is a little bit ironic. Anyway, he is somebody that's been able to play in a variety of different situations, in different environments, and be a guy that can give you 20 goals, has a pretty good career shooting percentage, and I believe signed a 2-year deal with the team. Probably going to be getting a lot of good opportunities, more minutes than he was in Toronto, and feels like a relatively safe pick for probably 20 goals. I don't want to go too much more over that. I don't want to say he's going to have a 35-goal year or anything of that nature, but could contribute to helping out this top six, find that goal scoring they desperately need. And then another big name that's probably going to get a lot of minutes this year, Teuvo Teravainen. I have been way too optimistic about how things will go in his return from Chicago, or to Chicago from Carolina, as he won a championship with the Hawks in 2015, played in Carolina for a long time, had some really good years, kind of close to being a point-per-game player with him. Not exactly, some years were better than others, but still a goal scorer for them, and is going to be in a spot now where he should get more minutes, as he is on a Hawks team that is worse significantly compared to a team like Carolina. But he could be getting a lot of minutes with Connor Bedard as Bedard finds his game and then gets even better theoretically in year two, hopefully avoiding a sophomore slump. And I think for Teuvo Teravainen, he could be one of those players that is able to help spark them back into being competitive, even if it's not right away. As for the remaining parts of the top six, it's still probably up there in the air a little bit, but Jason Dickinson was a goal scorer for the team last year. Actually was tied with Connor Bedard for the most goals this past season with 22, so maybe he's going to be able to get more minutes. Taylor Hall is an intriguing player here because of the fact that he had 4 points in 10 games last season, but only played in 10 games and is an older player. You're wondering exactly how things are going to work for him. Philip Kurashev is certainly an interesting option here too, as he had 18 goals on the season last year and played, I think, a little over 19 minutes a night. I'm not going to say that all of these players are a net positive for their team, or they're able to consistently be somebody that's helping their team win, because they might be in deficiency in some other way or multiple ways. However, when it comes down to it, this team is going to have to find ways to score more goals. I do feel like that their top line guys should be able to contribute more this year, and they're in a better spot to be able to provide more of that offense. But we do have to watch out for this, because this is going to be part of whether or not they are a team that cracks 60 points. Second talking point is about Luke Richardson. Now, Richardson is about to embark on his third season with Chicago and is in a weird spot, because the past 2 years, in year one and year two, they finished bottom of the Central Division and have been a team that hasn't even been able to get past 60 points on the year. His first year they finished with 59. Last year they regressed to 52, and they have only been able to amass 49 combined wins in this period. It's not normal to see a coach be in a spot where if he has a bad third year, he'd be able to have job security. But I do think the first 2 years of his contract, things are a little bit different as the expectations were fairly low. This year, there are bigger expectations, and he's going to have to battle with those expectations while also trying to figure out how to work this roster. Because on one hand, you probably want to give your more experienced and better players more minutes to try to be more competitive and secure your job for possibly another year. But on the other hand, too, you have a lot of younger players you're going to be trying to develop, and you are dealing with some things that you can't control, like injuries and players possibly winning trades or just other things you don't foresee coming before the season starts. And that's going to be a big challenge for him to try to get all of these things working in his favor. In a perfect world, all these young prospects come in and they're NHL ready, and even if they aren't stars, they're able to be a role player for you, a depth player, if you will. But that's not the case, unfortunately. That's just how the way that it is in the NHL. I think for Richardson, this is going to be a huge year to prove what he can be, because if they go out there and even hit 70 points on the year, which again, do you feel like they're going to get there? That'll probably be more up to you. But if they have 70 points and all of these young guys are producing or developing nicely, then you would say, oh, Richardson's job is probably more safe. But if things don't go super well, and then he's forced to probably play more of those veteran players more minutes, things continue to be a problem, then you'd have to imagine that he's not going to be there for a fourth season. I don't exactly know what his contract details are at the moment, but either way, if they finish bottom of their division for a third straight year, you don't hear about many coaches being last in a specific group and being able to do that consistently and have long-term job security. I know that obviously Ottawa, when they had DJ Smith as their head coach, he was there for a while, but I think the situation is going to be a little bit different. And I did want to close this part out by saying that Richardson is not to blame for the roster construction and things of that nature, as over the past 2 years, I am not going to go out there and say, oh, if I had been in charge of the team, they would have won the President's Trophy, they would have been Stanley Cup champions, they would have at least gone to the playoffs. No, I'm well aware that if many other people had taken over for this team, they would still be bad. In fact, I think it would have taken a miracle some years to try to make this team uber competitive. But yeah, we are looking at this and seeing how things go. And then this third storyline for the Hawks is going to be whether or not they can build off some of the positives from last season. You could be seeing this team that did not perform very well, especially for long stretches over the previous season, saying what exactly were some positives? Well, I think there were some things that were good. Their PK was actually good. May seem shocking, may seem impossible considering the PK percentage was bad, but in a lot of categories like shots against per 60 and scoring chances against per 60, they were top 10 in the league, and not in a bad way, in a good way. The problem is, though, they had the second worst save percentage on the PK this year, but if they can go out there and be a side like we saw last year where they weren't in the box a lot per time on ice in games played and things like that, and be able to limit the chances and protect the slot, especially the interior slot, you should probably see an improvement when they've got guys in the box, and that's going to be able to help them out more in this situation. Was it a ton of goals that were scored more than what was expected? No, I think it was 9 or 10, but for a team that might be in a spot where they need to win close games, you don't want to have a goalie let up an easy goal or something like that while you are trying to move forward and get out of the cellar, if you will. So watching the PK this year could be something to watch out for here, as a blue line, especially with how they've got it set up, has a lot of veteran guys that you look at and say, those were name brand players not that long ago. Some of them still are, kind of. But of course, Vlasic is younger, that signed a long-term extension. Either way, I'm getting off topic here. As for another thing, they were a side that had a lot of bad. In fact, I believe they had 5 losing streaks, 5 games or more last year, but they had about a month period from March 5th to April 6th where they went 8-6 in that time. So you could point at that and say, guys, maybe we weren't, the best team in the league by any means last year, but we had over a month and a day where we were able to win more games than we lost. And that may not seem like a whole lot, but in the locker room, you could say we were able to do that for a longer period of time. We're going to be even better this year, or maybe we have 7 weeks, 8 weeks, where we're able to see that was the case. So overall, what are my thoughts on this team? Well, Chicago is a side that I still feel like is not going to be able to make the playoffs, and that is not a surprise. In fact, everybody would probably say while they are going to be improved, they are not going to be anywhere close to the playoffs, and if they are, that will be a really fun and exciting storyline to watch out for in a big market that is historic. But looking at this team, their goal is not really to make the playoffs. It is about developing these younger players and being better. And I think the beautiful thing here, too, is if they improve their defensive game, they could be able to see more progress. As you saw, Peter Mrazek didn't have the best stats last year, but I think he ended up still having a positive goal save above average total, which is good. And that's crazy considering he was getting peppered a lot. He had 7 games where he faced 40 shots or more. Might have been 6, either way, 6 or 7. That was pretty common. You saw a lot of games where it was like 38, 39, 37 shots. if he's able to face a lot of shots and be good, that's good. You have Laurent Brossoit that's been able to have a couple of good seasons in a row, and a goalie tandem that if the PK is good, defensive is a little bit better, top six is contributing more. Maybe they aren't going to win 50 games, but could 30 be on the table? That's something we could talk about. But while we have been hyping them up and talking about how their point differential could be the most improved compared to what we saw last season and this upcoming season, I do think we have to be aware too that the Hawks were bottom 10 in a ton of categories and are still in the midst of a rebuild. Yes, they are fun and they are bringing in some guys that might not have signed there before, but we still have to see the progress this year. And if not, that's where you start to say, what changes do we need to make? The beautiful thing though is as fans, we get to watch from a fan perspective and get to enjoy it and watch and see whether or not it works out. So anyway, what are your thoughts on the Chicago Blackhawks for this upcoming season? Are they going to crack 70 points? Are they going to get where they have, a monster season from Bedard? Is their goalie tandem going to be good? Is Richardson going to be sticking around? Do they find a way to push another team into the basement of the Central Division? All of those things I want to know down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And go hockey, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.